I'll tell you what I think about it since you're not going to tell me.
Okay.
I think it sucks.
I want to support Trump, but we don't have to agree on every single stinking thing. And these big omnibus bills are not good for Americans.
Trump needs opposition from his supporters sometimes. And if COVID didn't teach you that, I don't know
Amen.
where.
Western Heritage Classic in the town of Abilene stole my cowboy heart away. I am not happy, Jim, that the border is going to be open.
Lonesome Lands podcast, Lonesome Report. We are back. Sorry for the long. I guess it wasn't that long. It's just everything got screwed up, which we'll talk about later on. But we're going to get into it. Big, beautiful bill. I don't know if you think it's beautiful or not, but that's what we'll talk about. Brook Rollins update and everything going on with the New World screwworm, the border. Um, Bill Bullard testified in the Senate, the RCAF antitrust cattle industry testimony in the Senate. We'll talk about that, and then whatever else comes up, I suppose, whatever Shad wants to talk about. But this episode is brought to you by From the Farm. From the Farm is putting the reins back in the hands of ranchers and farmers by linking you straight to the consumer. No middlemen. We need to be price makers, not price takers. Just honest food, dedicated producers, and genuine relationships. We're creating the competitive marketplace producers need to thrive, leveling the playing field against corporate giants. So if you're selling direct or thinking about selling direct, direct to consumer, if you're a rancher who wants to sell your beef or your hogs or your pork or whatever, direct to consumer, go to fromthefarm.org. If you're a consumer who straight from wants to buy straight from a farmer, go to fromthefarm.org and buy it right there. Here we go. Big
Here
beautiful
we go.
bill. What'd you say?
Here we go.
All right. Big beautiful all kinds of stuff in the news. This is I didn't give the date. July 1st. Happy July,
1
Shad.
July 2025.
Oh man, summertime. We're in the dog days.
Dude, this year has gone fast.
Summer for sure. Um Big beautiful bill passed the Senate this morning.
Yep.
Elon Musk says he's going to start a new political party the moment that thing gets passed. I don't know, a lot to talk about. You started out, Shad. What do you think?
I don't know what to say. You and I have talked about the big, beautiful bill before. I'm sure there is a lot of good stuff in it. There is a lot of good stuff in it, but I believe that all of that good stuff should be standalone. Of course, it passed through the House, then it passed through the Senate this morning uh, in a tie vote. That tie vote was cast, or the winning vote was casted by our Vice President J.D. Vance. I think it goes back to the House now, where they will cut a little bit more, but sounds like the Republicans were happy that it passed, but man, it's been a lot of debate, and so I'm anxious to see what's going to happen on it.
Okay, you're not telling me anything about what you think about it. I'll tell you what I think about it since you're not going to tell me.
Okay,
I think it sucks.
I I just
This is
said there's
not
some
what.
good stuff in it.
Oh yeah, but that's how they do things, and that's what we're tired of. It's the same thing. Like what this election was about. I felt like the last election was about changing the same things. Like no more status quo. This is status quo, typical DC, the way they do things.
I
It's
agree.
one giant bill, and they put good things in it, and then the things they don't want to talk about are the other things that are in it. So people
Yep.
really don't even know.
No, I
Um,
agree. And what was it, like 1,800 pages or 1,088 pages? I think it's a bunch of
I don't
pages.
know. It's the same. It's the same thing we've
It's
heard all
just
our
a big
life. We
old
got to
omnibus
pass it to
bill.
find out what's in it.
Yeah, that's exactly right. It's a big old omnibus bill, and it's crazy. We need to. I don't know.
I
I
know,
feel
and
like
then you're stuck because it's like you don't want to, you know, stop all this momentum that we got going. But it's not our
right.
fault that they're trying to pass this bill that they did not campaign on pushing omnibus 1,800
No,
page that increases
exactly.
spending and increases everything, and it doesn't cut. Thomas Massey put up the things that it doesn't cut. It doesn't cut welfare for illegal immigrants. It doesn't cut like transgender funding transgender surgeries. It doesn't cut all of this stupid stuff that we're
I
already doing. It doesn't cut that stuff.
I know.
We spent all these months talking about Doge. We have all of these cuts that should be in there that aren't. Um, it's frustrating. But I guess
Well,
to get into the specifics, the public
yeah.
lands thing, which we've talked a ton about, um, I guess go back into it like we and before we were talking about. Well, I don't really know what we were talking before the show. Like, I don't even know what was in that or what that was about or if it, and that's the problem,
I almost
right?
feel like it was a test of the people,
Yeah, and
right?
well, there was so much. One thing that came out of it, I think, is just a learning thing. For me, it was like one thing that came out of it is if you don't do this right, which a number of things they didn't do right, because people didn't know what was in it. I've seen
Right.
people that I agree with, people that I respect and follow, and I like that to hear their opinion, and they're on both sides. People are very much
No.
for it, people are very much
Yep.
against it.
Yep.
Um, but the organization against it, that was a learning issue too. When you go to sell public lands and you're not specific and you say we're selling public lands, that's a loser.
Yeah,
100%
it
loser.
was
And
100% from the get-go.
yeah,
People
I
did
mean, you
not
had
like that. And even people that are on our side that are dedicated to protection of property and property rights and the Constitution, they were like, this is terrible. This is terrible. And I'm like, I really didn't get into the depth of it because I had friends on both sides that were debating, and I'm like, I'm really confused about a lot of it. I think though the confusion was met with miscommunication by the author, right?
yeah.
That's what I think happened because I don't think they were going to go out there and sell your your parks and national historic areas and
Well, they
stuff like
definitely
that.
weren't. Like that was clear they weren't going to sell those things. But
Yeah,
what
but that
wasn't
wasn't
clear,
communicated.
right? What wasn't clear is what they were going to sell.
Right.
Even if you were for it or against it, and you have to be more clear, I guess, before you come out with something
Yeah.
like that. I mean, they had Joe Rogan, they had
I
all of
know.
these guys that the biggest names kind of in
Yeah.
hunting and everything. They were just 100% against it, and they organized the masses too. It wasn't like we're against this bill. It was call your senators. Here's your senator. Here's
Yeah.
the phone numbers. You got to get a hold of these people to protect public lands.
But they
Um,
have rescinded that, correct?
Oh yeah, it's not involved.
It's
There's nothing in there about selling public lands anymore.
right.
And that's the
Right.
learning experience too. Like
Exactly.
those people organize the way if you want to stop something in DC, that's how you do it. You
Well,
get
they
the
got
word
her
out.
stopped, man. They listen to those people a little better than they listen to the people of agriculture. I'll guarantee you that.
It was almost like how to not put something in a bill because
Yeah.
they kind of tried to slip it in there. It wasn't real specific. It seemed like there was a lot of gray area. And when it's like I say, we're living in a different age. That kind of crap used to work because people were less informed and weren't on Instagram all day and
Hmm.
Facebook and all this
Right.
stuff. But now when you have all of these public lands users, hunters, hikers, all these people that really have grown up with those opportunities and stuff, and you can reach out to them within 5 minutes. If you're somebody like a Joe
Immediately.
Rogan or
Yes.
the Sean Ryan had this Braxton McCoy on. There's really big outlets that were pushing against it. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I think it was kind of a test of to see the nature of the people, to see what was going to happen if they did come up with a proposal like this, and it failed miserably. And I guess that's good. Come on
But I
now.
think another thing it showed is there's a lot of education. I think that needs to be. We've talked a lot about public lands, and I've learned a ton within the last few months through the Maude deal and through
Yeah.
all this different stuff we've got into. And a lot of people they hear public lands and they think they're Yellowstone and this kind of
Right.
stuff, and they don't realize like Charles Maude on the podcast I did with him. He's talking about how his ancestors owned, I think maybe that area, that a big
Yeah.
part of like the Buffalo Gap National Grasslands
Hmm.
was privately owned up until the Depression, and
Right.
all of those people could not afford the tax payment. And so, I mean, this isn't like Teddy Roosevelt came through and said this land needs to be
Right.
protected. It
It
was
was
a
a
bunch of
takeover.
people who couldn't afford the taxes on it, and the federal government came in and started paying taxes and took it
That's
over.
correct. Well, they didn't pay taxes. They just took it
Well, yeah,
over.
they took it over and then they lease it back to the people.
That's
So
right.
there's just a lot into that people don't get. So what else in the bill going forward? Like what's next?
Well, I noticed that Trump was really promoting his tax policy that would benefit farmers and ranchers. You know, the death tax, Section 179, Section 199A. The death tax would go from the 2025 max on a single person is 13.3 million, and for a couple was 27 million, but that would be eliminated through the big beautiful bill, which is good. I don't have to worry about it, but that's good. Section 179, the 2025 max, if you make a profit, is 1.25 million. That is going to be moved up to 3.13 million in fixed assets.
Right, and that's why rural people we talk about land rich all the time. And so
Yeah,
if you go have to inherit these, farms and ranches are worth millions of dollars. It doesn't mean you're millionaires if you own them, but when when someone dies and you inherit that, they talk about assets and the 15 million if when you're inheriting a $15 million farm or ranch, and you have to pay taxes on that, it can make it.
well, most of the time you have to sell it to pay the tax,
Right,
right?
exactly.
So
That's
that's
how
what
we
they
lose.
call
Yeah.
land rich, cash poor.
Hmm.
So if somebody dies and you have a asset value of 13.99 million under the 2025 rule, you would have there would no tax liability on that up to 13.99 million. Anything
Right.
at first for a single individual, that's 27 million for a couple. But under the big beautiful bill, that is eliminated totally. I think that's a good thing. I think it's great. Keep the ranches in the families.
Yeah. And yeah. But that's the thing. You get into these deals where they stick a good thing in. It's like that's how he gets the guy in the cowboy hat
Yeah.
standing behind him. And NCBA, they have this press release where they're all for pushing this bill, and they can come out and they can say talk about the death tax and talk about how it helps farmers and ranchers, but who knows what else is in there, that's bad, that helps these corporations, which NCBA is usually the one lobbying for corporations. So if there's things in there that help them, they're not going to talk about that. They're going to talk about these, throw something for the little guy in there just to get this whole
Yeah.
deal passed.
It's a carrot for sure.
Yeah. I mean, and then I don't know. And then, they get behind Trump, and then Trump's like, well, these are my guys that are helping me try to get this thing passed, which is
I want
kind
to
of
be
where you're
behind Trump
at.
too. Don't
What's that?
worry. I want to be behind Trump too. I want to support Trump, but we don't have to agree on every single stinking thing. And these big omnibus bills are not good for Americans because
Yeah.
then you have lobby power being influenced. You have all of these small hidden agendas inside of these, and then everybody has to sell their soul to the devil to negotiate, right? To negotiate. That's what it's about. They're all
Yeah.
running around on Capitol Hill trying to negotiate terms on the big beautiful bill when they could go through, read one part of it, one item in it, pass the thing, go to the next one, pass the thing, go to
Yeah.
the
If
next
they're
one,
good,
pass
they'll
the thing.
pass. When you have
Yeah,
Republican majority and everything, like,
exactly.
it's just so frustrating because this just isn't how it should be done, I feel like. And you talk about people don't want, if you're a Trump supporter, you don't want to come out against the bill. Like,
Yeah,
just
in Congress
by
for
your
sure.
nature, you want to support the guy
Yeah.
because, he's not Kamala Harris, right? Like we're still there. And there's this group, I think, of people who scan the internet to find opposite, people who voted for Trump that are now criticizing him,
Yeah.
and they come in on the comments, like they're on my comments. I think AJ Richards, he had that viral, the From the Farm guy who
Yeah.
advertised the podcast. He had that viral clip of him talking about JBS. I mean, people told him he wanted his kids to die. I mean, it was crazy. These Trump derangement people, they come in and are like, you voted for this, you voted for this. Like, if you want to say you voted for this to me as I'm criticizing Trump, feel free, because I agree. I did vote for this, and I'm still 100% happy that Kamala Harris is not the president. But I mean,
Me
Trump,
too.
yeah, but Trump needs opposition from his supporters sometimes. And if COVID didn't teach you that, I don't know
Amen.
what you're thinking. I mean, do you
Excellent
want,
point.
I mean, yeah, that's where we were. And Trump was in
Excellent,
charge when
excellent
all the
point.
businesses in America got shut down in this whole pandemic, and it was one of the worst things I've seen in my lifetime as far as freedoms and infringement on personal freedom and all that stuff. And that all started during Trump's administration. And if his supporters would have been like, hold up, let's not do this, I think we should have seen more of that. And going forward, we should see
Yeah.
more of it. If you don't agree with him, which I don't at this point on this thing, you should say it and not be
No,
just
I
go along
agree.
with everything that he comes out with. To
Well,
me, it's
the
like he has made a decision. When he became elected, he could have went with like true constitutionalist freedom fighter direction, which is
yeah,
Thomas Massey Rand Paul. But
yeah,
after his election, he was standing there with Mike Johnson, right? Who the Democrats love, and the Democrats used him to get all their stupid stuff in, and now here we are again. Um,
man. You're right. It's almost like the omnibus or this big beautiful bill is meant to confuse the checks and balances of our federal agency or our federal system and process. I still love Trump and I still love his candidness. I don't think he has surrounded himself or his agencies have selected the right people. But how's he supposed to know that? I mean, we
well,
are, just in agriculture by itself, he's not an ag oriented person. His people that he puts below him are not ag oriented producing type people. They're all politicians. They're all shined up in the universities and institutions. They're lawyers, and so how would they know what affects producers? So he has to go by their word, right? He has to go by what we tell our associations tells the politicians go to their leader, and that's President Trump. So how do we expect, when we're not being represented on the grassroots level the way we should be, how do we expect him to have knowledge? It's just me and you out there
but I mean,
talking.
Elon Musk is his number one advisor, and he is probably the number one campaigner against this bill right now.
Yeah.
I mean, there's people that he could have went. It's almost like he made a decision. I don't want to. He loves spending money. That's the thing with Trump. He loves spending money, and that's Elon Musk's number one complaint. Like, this is adding to the deficit. This is continuing to spend money. This is not what we campaigned on.
Yeah, I get that. I get that. It's pretty difficult to get my little feeble mind wrapped around.
And the whole climate stuff, when it comes to agriculture, and that's the other thing about this giant bill. Nobody's really sure. Like, you can't, you read these articles and they talk about, like, even NCBA's thing about how they're coming out with it. They say, okay, it increases the exemption for the death tax, but it gives no numbers. you
Right.
know, None
No,
like,
you're right.
okay, so how much are we talking about here? And then the other two sections of taxes, it doesn't give any numbers about that. It just like makes this exemption permanent, make this, but it's like, well, what does it really do? They don't,
Yeah.
and that's where I'm talking about like the climate stuff. Like Trump talked about during his campaign, climate change is a hoax, he said, he's going to get rid of all this stuff, and we're not going to build another windmill, all this stuff. But there's climate stuff in this thing, and like this 45Q tax credit, which is the carbon pipeline one.
Right.
They say, oh, we're not. But what it ends up doing, what I read, this was a couple weeks ago, so who the heck knows what it's at now? But they were going to increase the tax credit for that carbon pipeline crap for sequestering carbon and stuff.
Yeah.
which is right into the climate change deal,
Yep.
which is the exact opposite on what he campaigned on. And
Exact opposite.
and you got to know these omnibus bills are written by the lobbyists. Like that's why omnibus exists to confuse everyone, to sneak stuff through. Um, and that's where we're at. I think. I mean, that's the number. A major reason why I hate it is because it increases the. From what I read from the Carbon Coalition or whatever, it increases the tax credit for carbon sequestration, meaning the pipeline will get more money
Yeah.
by pipe. So it's like, okay, we're not going to push the eminent domain thing, but we're going to make it to where the pipeline can pay farmers more to allow them to put the pipeline in. And that's how
On
they've
the
got their strongest supporters,
yeah,
is by
on the
paying them
federal
off.
government, on the
Have we done
taxpayer.
enough on the big big pile of crap?
Yes.
Oh, the data centers, AI data centers,
Yeah.
something that so this and it gives I don't know if it gives I don't know what it does, but it allows them to come in. I think it took away all eminent domain talk. And I don't know if that the AI data centers thing is confusing. We're going to look into it more and talk about it more in the future. But you said there's one coming into Texas, and
There's
these
one
what
in
these are, I
Abilene.
guess, are just
Yeah.
giant. I guess I'll give my experience. Um, Outside of Council Bluffs, Iowa, about a mile from where I used to live, as the crow flies, Google came in, bought this great big. It's right by a Bunge soybean plant. So when we haul soybeans,
Wow.
um, and Google came in and thought they were gonna. This goes into a whole nother thing. They thought they were gonna kind of take over. They tried to buy some land from Bunge, and they didn't really realize how big Bunge is. Bunge is like the soybean. I mean, it's they're pretty. It is talk about concentration in agriculture. We could go into a whole different rabbit hole on soybeans because they Bunge controls it. Um. Anyway, Google put in this great big, and when they built it, AI wasn't even talked about. It was this big server. It was supposed to house these servers. But
Right.
if you're going down Interstate 29, on one side of the interstate is Mid American Energy, which is Warren Buffett's. It's where I pay my, who gives all the energy for my house. And it's Warren Buffett owns it or owns Berkshire owns the majority of it or whatever. And they're putting up all these windmills, all this crap. But anyway, one side of the interstate is that, and they've been expanding ever since this Google place come in, and the Google place is on the other side of the interstate. So they
See.
moved there specifically for, and of course the county gives them all these tax incentives and all this stuff. And it's right
Yeah.
on the Mills County line, but it's just south of Council Bluffs, out of Pottawatomie County and Mills County. But then there's also this creek that runs down to it. They talk about which comes off the Missouri River, which the Missouri River is right there. So they're able to funnel water off of there and run it straight up to. I mean, there's a lot that goes into it, but it's just a never-ending construction project. They
Well,
just
that's what
add
this
on
one
and add
in.
on and add on.
Yeah. That's what this. There's one in Abilene, Texas, being built by Crusoe Energy. That's what everybody's talking about. It takes enormous amounts of water. This is a 1 million square foot facility, and a lot of I've been getting a few calls on power lines that are, threatening eminent domain on
Yeah,
producers.
and that's to
Really
that
in
place.
kind
I've
of a
seen that.
spoke wheel toward that deal. And I'm like, this needs to be watched pretty close. But I was surprised that they were going to build one in Abilene, Texas, one of the driest places on earth, with the least amount of water, 1 million square foot facility, and it's just getting started. So I really not sure I'm really not sure that I want to understand AI from what I've seen of it so far.
Well, it's
But I do,
helpful if you type in Google now. Everything's AI. So
I
like,
know.
and it scans through. Like if you type in 45Q, like I would type in 45Q tax deduction, big beautiful bill, and it brings up all these different
Yeah,
articles. It scans through and brings you up the things that talk about the articles. It's helpful, but yeah, I don't understand. I mean, and the size of these things, the amount of energy they're going to
I
use,
know.
I
I
can't
know.
wrap my head around it. Something we need to. It's
Well,
been talked about in agriculture a lot because they're moving them into these rural communities. I mean, Abilene,
so
Texas
is it a
is.
data center? Is that ultimately what it is to hold and store data.
Yeah, because like I'm talking about the Google one, that wasn't an AI thing, and but the in the water they need for cooling, I believe,
Yeah, it's
because
a
they have all
cooling
these
mechanism.
giant computer. Like you feel your
Yeah,
laptop, it gets hot. Imagine
right,
a gigantic building filled with computers. I
right.
mean, it's so. I mean, yeah, something we'll talk about going forward. But Abilene, Texas, and it's also
Abilene.
why so far away from? I mean, that is middle of nowhere.
Well, because there's a lot of
Great town, by the way.
well, I love Abilene, but there's a lot of renewable resource projects to the south and west, like in the Big Bend country that's coming this way. And so I think it's all going to tie
You mean
together,
like
Jim.
wind and solar stuff?
Wind and solar. Yeah. There, we've got a lot of
Ugh.
wind here in North Texas, and between my house and Abilene, which is 80 miles, there is a ton of solar and wind projects in
Western
place.
Heritage Classic. Go to that's in Abilene, Texas. One of the
Western
best
Heritage Classic in the town of Abilene
Western.
stole
Oh,
my cowboy heart away.
what's that? That's a poem or a song?
Yeah, that's a little snippet from Red Steagall. Western Heritage Classic in the town of Abilene stole my cowboy heart away.
Yeah, that's great. I did the show. I took my Longhorn
Yeah,
stuff down to the show. I don't remember what year it was. It was a long time ago. But a little highlight of the show, the Budweiser horses were there, and every morning the Buddy, the Dalmatian, would come over. I got all this dead animal stuff, longhorns and skulls and different things, and the dog would come over and sniff through all my stuff. And that Dalmatian, he would not pay one bit of attention. I was like, hey, come here, buddy, come here, buddy. His
you're
name was
like,
Buddy, and he wouldn't even look at me. And I suppose they're just trained to be focused. They sit up
yeah,
on that carriage. The other
yep,
thing is they got a chuck wagon cook off, and my
yep.
booth was just north of the chuck wagon cook off, and the wind blew like crazy. And when I unloaded, all my stuff smelled like mesquite for I don't know, a month after that. My whole trailer, everything just smelled like mesquite. It was wonderful. I loved it.
Yeah, I love the Western Heritage Classic. My oldest sister won the horse show down there two or three times years
Yeah, a
ago.
great horse show, great ranch rodeo.
Yep.
This is like an ad for Western Heritage Classic. One thing about it though, I do remember it was 106 one day that I was there.
So
And the
hot.
wind was blowing. It was like you were in a furnace. And they told me that I was like, am I going to be on? So it's mostly outdoor vendors. They have a really neat,
Round
like, yeah, that round building.
roundhouse. Hmm.
But I was outdoors and I was like, am I going to be on concrete? Oh yeah, you'll be. Or am I going to be in like the dirt or whatever? It was like a blacktop with gravel over the top of it.
Yeah,
And I mean, the wind was just blowing that
hot.
sand and dirt, and it was 106. I just cooked out there.
First weekend in May, I think.
I slept in my trailer too, back in those days.
Yep.
Whew, don't do that. I'm done with doing that. All right. Um, Brook Rollins update.
Yeah, Brook Rollins update. We have some good news, Jim. Secretary Rollins rolled back the roadless rule on federal lands that was in place as a Clinton era rule placed in about 2001 that shut all traffic down through, federal lands. There was about, well, we've got, I can't remember how many millions of acres, about 8 million acres that they had no access to at all, which really created this aura of no fire mitigation, no ability to cut timber, no energy production, no hunting. It was totally roadless rule.
Yeah, you
And
couldn't build a road in on
correct,
well, what do they
correct.
qualify it as? Just federal land?
Yeah, federal lands. Yeah. And so Brook Rollins rescinded that rule this week. Going to start pushing some energy production, mining, logging, hunting, and we're going to re reintegrate more interaction in our federal on our forests in our what would you call that, federal lands, forests,
Public, yeah.
public,
Forest Service roads, all
so
that.
that's really good, and I support that from Brook
Great
Rollins.
job, Brook Rollins.
Yep, I
Now,
really,
New
really
World
like
screwworm
that.
update.
Appreciate that so much. That's good news on the Brook Rollins report. Let me follow it up with some bad news on the Brook Rollins report. Brook Rollins has announced the opening of the border to
To cattle
Mexican
imports.
imported cattle. They're going to do it on a kind of a stair step basis. The very first, they're going to open Douglas, Arizona, July 7th. And then Columbus, New Mexico, July 14th, Santa Teresa, New Mexico, July 21st. And then it just kind of goes up and up. Now, she's saying that that Mexico is working closely with the United States to mitigate the New World screwworm. Now, we know that that is a problem, and it's a damn hard problem right now. And Brook Rollins 2 weeks ago was down at the border. They're going to refurbish an old screwworm fly production plant in Mexico. Partner with us. We're going to pay for it, of course. And
That's how our
that won't be
partnership goes.
finished. That won't be finished until 2026. In the meantime, they're going to continue to spread them, to fly those screwworms out through the Darien Gap in the southern part of Mexico. We are going to build a screwworm production facility here in Texas. That will take 3 years. I went to a friend of mine who's a veterinarian and a regional director for the Texas Farm Bureau, had a really, really good presentation on the screwworm issue. And it's a bad issue. I mean, it's something that we damn sure need to be very, very concerned about, Jim.
Yeah,
I
talk
think
about that.
opening this,
You were telling me about that meeting. Talk about that meeting, New World
yeah,
Screwworm. You got all this information about it.
yeah. Well,
What's the information?
it was very, very eye opening.
Talk
You know,
about how we weren't going to have a lonesome history, but this is the historic. Talk about what people went through when the screwworm was in South Texas.
Oh yeah. Well, it was bad and it was very eye-opening. You hear about the cowboys talking about having to doctor the screwworms with this paste, and it was just an all day, every day ordeal. The screwworm is different than a maggot. A maggot eats on dead flesh, right? The screwworm eats and lives on live flesh. And so, he told stories of people that would find cattle and horses that screwworm had infested, and you could just take your hand in there and pull the screwworms out. It was so or
Because
those
they did.
larvae
It
out.
doesn't. Do you even have to have a wound for them to
You have to have, like, okay, let's just say there's got to be some sort of wound. So if you brand your calves, you can do
castrate?
it.
And yeah.
If it's a newborn calf with the navel opened, they can smell it up to a mile and a half. A screwworm can smell that to a mile and a half. If you ear notch your calves, boom. If you dehorn your calves, boom. If a calf in South Texas or a deer or a horse goes through the mesquite and scratches itself, boom. He can lay up to five. I think he said 5,000 eggs around one tiny hole that has leaked blood. So he says if you give your calves a shot in the neck and you pull it out and there's a little drop
Mm-hmm.
of blood, that screwworm can smell that from a mile and a half away and then lay those eggs there, and then you have the starting of the infestation. He told stories of people that actually, they'd take their little kids out and put them on the swing back in the day, and the flies would get around these mucous membranes in your nose and your eyes, and they said pretty quick you'd have these little kids dying from screwworm infestations, eating their flesh alive.
So it's
It
not
was
just
terrible.
cattle we're talking about. I
No, we're
mean,
talking
and
about
the
every
hunting
animal.
industry in South Texas,
The
everything
hunting,
is going to be.
the deer hunting industry in Texas is a $2 billion industry. And this will devastate them as much as it will the cattle industry.
Well, if there's one group of people I think you want behind you, what this public land thing has shown, let's get the hunters fired up about the screwworm, and
Yeah.
that border will be closed for forever.
Well, she is dang sure going to open it up incrementally to cattle bison. The horses, they have to be quarantined, I think, 7 days. There's really no closing for the horses because they're easy. But I'm 100% positive that the corporate feeders in TSCFA and the cattle raisers have lobbied on Secretary Rollins, because even this veterinarian, who is a classic good man, a Texas native and loyal to America, says we cannot get these buildings built in the next 2 to 3 years. It can't happen. So what are we going to do? I don't understand
Well,
what's going
just
on.
to
And I've talked to a rancher down there on the border, and he's like, Shad, it's a lot closer than 700 miles. He says, I won't tell you how many miles he says it was in, but he says it's within a couple hundred miles, I
he had
think.
heard
And
of a ranch within a couple hundred miles.
he said that. You can't prove that, but uh, here's the deal. We're working, USDA is working with Mexico's National Department of Health, Food Safety, and Food Quality on an outreach, education, and training efforts to raise awareness and put producers on high alert about New World screwworm, along with utilizing their well functioning central laboratory for diagnosing cases. While Mexico has made great progress on animal movement controls and surveillance, and we know that is not right, additional progress will help ensure the remaining U.S. ports reopen. The thing is the cattle, there's a real issue with cattle smuggling. I don't care what anybody says. I keep hearing it from those. I'm just a rancher, but I keep hearing it from those that are in the know. And so how do we make for sure that that is what she is saying is going to happen? I mean, I'm telling you, if we saw what they did yesterday. We ran the board up. Fats were up $3, 2.50. Feeders were up, almost well over $3 yesterday. And then they announced the opening of the border last night or yesterday afternoon after the board had closed. And what happened to the board today? Went down over $4 to $5 on feeder cattle, 2.75 on fats. I don't know exactly where they closed, but we're talking we lost on just the first day of knowing that the border is going to be open 7 days from now. In one spot, we lose 1% of the market. Now people are like, well, on these prices, that's a lot, but it really 1% isn't that much. Well, guess what? 1% lost value is $35 a head. $35 a head. Now,
Hmm.
if you run 10,000 head, if you run 1,000 head, what do you got? 35,000. 10,000 head, 350,000. It's big. It's real big money. And so I don't know. I am not happy about the border opening. I don't think we have control of the New World screwworm yet. I mean, people say, well, Shad, all they got to do is dip them, dip them, make sure they have the right uh, injectables, but that's not the way it works. Those dipping only lasts for a little bit. Injectables, pour-ons, they only last seven to 21 days. And then nobody's even talking about the wind and the flies. And we heard a couple of weeks ago, NCBA and their conversation with who was it? One of the radio stations, and they said we expect the New World screwworm by September to be clear to the Canadian border. Really?
What?
I mean, what the
I
hell?
never saw that.
Why are we even doing this? What is going on? So
Well, but
I am not happy, Jim, that the border is going to be open. I knew it was coming, and I'll tell you why I knew it was coming, because some of those people that were lobbying so hard for opening the border a couple weeks ago, they just stopped lobbying all of a sudden. And I pointed out to one of our friends, I said, who haven't you heard from in a while? And he's like, yep, that's right.
well, do you also find it interesting that NCBA came out, pedal to the metal, pushing the big beautiful bill, and within a week, borders open. And NCBA, to make it clear, National Cattlemen's Beef Association, is for the border to be open. They came out with their press release praising Brook Rollins.
Right.
RCAF came out, supportive of Brook Rollins, but against the border to be open. So I mean, there you have you two.
Well, I mean, let's just face it. Brook Rollins is under extreme scrutiny and lobby by some very powerful and very rich lobbying organizations. And I mean, I guess she's got to balance it, but it is
But
not going
what's the
to.
problem is where she gets her information, and unfortunately, it seems like NCBA is getting a foothold in this USDA. That's for sure. And like you said, the Texas industry, cattle industry, really depends on Mexican imports, right? And even Kansas, but it's mostly these corporate feed yards.
Yeah.
And everybody loves, like, there was this YouTube people have sent me. This guy did a podcast at Five Rivers, and oh, how cool! Five Rivers is the biggest feed yard or cattle feeding operation in the country. They feed up close to 1 million head. Oh, that's so cool. They run all these cattle through this one spot. And I'm like, this is not what you want. Like, when I hear about 1 million head, that's like 1 million, or what is that, 100,000 feedlots that it could be individually owned. Instead of this, or the everything concentrating, and
Damn it, Jim, we
open.
need the lean. We
What's
need the
that?
lean. We need the lean.
What
That's
do you
the
mean?
quote of the day. We need the lean.
Oh, okay. Um, what do you mean? We need the lean. What does that mean?
The imported lean.
Oh, lean meat. Okay.
Yeah.
I was talking about industry concentration. But yeah, I mean, it's a big part, but it's the main people I think who depend on the imports are the corporate people. And that just goes to, like we just said, RCAF's against opening the border because they're for like the smaller independent farmers and ranchers. But there are small, probably independent farmers and ranchers that need Mexican cattle, right? Or depend on Mexican cattle
Well,
in your
yeah, it's
neighborhood
all
or south of you.
size is relative, and certainly there's a lot of Mexican cattle that are grazed in Texas, through the winter and through the summer. No doubt about that. I just think that right now, where the screwworm deal is, I mean, you have to know that there are a lot of cattle at the border waiting to cross right now. I mean, not a few. There are a lot. And supposedly they're going to only allow cattle that are produced in the northern states of Mexico to come across. How do they know that? We
Yeah.
know that
We're gonna
they've been,
trust that.
yeah, they've been bringing cattle up from that's not even an issue. That's
Right. We're
dumb to
just
even
gonna
say.
put all our industry trust of the whole entire industry on like the shadiest, most corrupt
Yeah. Nation.
countries out there when you get into South
Exactly.
America, because a bunch of them cattle come up too,
Yeah.
probably. Um,
100%. You're
yeah,
exactly right.
yeah,
That's why I don't trust a thing about it. I trust Secretary Rollins. I do. But when they say, we're working with Mexico's National Department of Health and Food, and we've got all these ranchers in northern Mexico or whatever they are, feeders. I don't know what they are. They need a place to go with those cattle. And it don't matter. I mean, it don't matter if they got a screwworm or not. They want to sell those cattle. And so they're going to open the border.
yeah.
I don't know. I just think we're playing with fire on that deal.
Well,
Not
do you
only is it going to
think?
put a glut of cattle through into the United States, which is going to push our prices down. Okay, that's fine. We're at record level highs. I get that. We're going to see a little fall here. Maybe, maybe not. I don't know. We don't know what the market's going to do. But the greatest danger is the screwworm. And what would the screwworm do? These guys in Kansas, these Angus guys that are so loyal to the Angus breed. What if it gets up there? What are they going to do? And listen, there's a lady on social media today promoting how dumb we all are because we don't agree with the Angus Association partnership with the Bezos Earth Fund, and she's telling us how dumb we are. What's going to happen when she gets the New World screwworm into her herd? What
Well,
will
what's
happen
going to
then?
happen when? That's what I'm thinking today. Like, we have this RCAF statement and we have the NCBA statement. There's forward looking. If the screwworm comes in and screws a bunch of stuff up, It's, we have who was for it and who was against it.
Yeah.
And since we deal in the rumor mill every once in a while, the rumor mill says there's Texas cattle feeders and probably Kansas and these big feeders that depend on the Mexican cattle that would rather have the screwworm and be able to get that cattle than not have the screwworm and not be able to get the cattle. What do you think about that?
I don't know. I would not think that they are that way. I
That's
do
the
not.
trouble with dealing with these corrupt people. There's who do you trust and what do you trust? Because,
Well, Jim, they are desperate for cattle. I know that. I mean,
and when you get
we've
into these lobbyist organizations, Texas Cattle Feeders is a huge organization that has a ton of pull with NCBA, which
they've
now
bought
is
in.
in
Yeah.
DC, talking to the people at USDA. So if they're like, and I've seen people on social media be like, well, the screwworm's going to happen no matter what. Let's get this going, and the screwworm isn't that big a deal. You'll see that kind of crap all the time
Yeah,
too.
we'll wait till we're all having to rope cattle in our
Right.
60s. They say you hear conflicting reports of how long it takes to eradicate it. I heard a guy on the radio today say, it'll take 3 years to eradicate it. I don't know about that. I know that we've eradicated it in shorter amounts of time, but it was smaller regions, right? And so I don't, if
And
it's
so
really,
long ago, when was that?
yeah,
Like you
do
think
what?
about the technology we have now, you know.
Well, yeah, but we have to be able to implement and actually put in action our
Oh, right.
technology. And
Yeah.
if we can't build these plants and refurbish these plants, I think the one plant we're going to help refurbish in Mexico is the Meta plant. It's not up and running right now. We're going to pay for that, and then we're going to build one in Texas. I'm all for that, but I suppose if it was the COVID and where they turned around and they made masks overnight, billions and billions of masks overnight, we could our technology probably would allow us to do this. But I mean, where we have to build the facility up and build the physical brick and mortar building right now, and it's going to take 3 years. We're behind. We are behind. And I asked that guy at that meeting, I said, what in the heck? How did we get here? And he says, well, our last Secretary of Agriculture dropped the ball. That's number one. And number two, we got complacent about how easy it was. And they kind of stopped. There was that Darien Gap, that real narrow strip that they were really pushing in, and they kind of lowered the amount that they were putting out there, and then boom, it
Yep.
got out of control.
So to go back from where we started from, we are critical of things happening at the time, but we still love Brook Rollins over Tom Vilsack, right? We're
Oh,
definitely
100%.
we're definitely glad we got the people we want or the people that are in
100%.
there over the people who just.
Well, I don't think Brooke Rollins is a commie, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I do
Tom
think
Vilsack's
she
a
I do
piece of
think
trash.
she needs some independent agriculture producers as her advisors, some true independent ag producers as her advisors. That would help a lot. I
Hmm.
don't know if we talked about this last week. Is they appointed another like almost 20 people to her staff. Every single one of them came from a trade organization or a college or university, or they came from Capitol Hill as an intern, all except one. And that guy was from Oklahoma. And he's one of the regenerative guys that believes in high subsidies. And so, I don't think she's getting a real world advice. That's what I think. And I want to believe she's truly a freedom maker. But we're going to she's got to decide. And I know this kind of sounds mean, but we have to decide if it's going to be America first or if it's not.
Yeah, that's the
If
thing
you're
on
going to
all this
promote the
stuff.
America first policy, we have to be first here, Jim. And
Right.
a lot of this stuff that's happening, I don't see that.
You're right on. Moving swiftly along after spending a half hour on screwworm. We spent a lot of time on screwworm. Um, Bill Bullard, Senate testimony, Senate hearing on antitrust, which was great to see. At least
Yes.
they're talking about it. Um, Even though once you start watching these Senate hearings, you'll realize that 5 years go by after they all say, "Oh, this is so great! I can't wait to work on this issue." when was that first hearing? Probably 2020, 2019. They can't wait to work on this antitrust issue in the cattle industry, and then you know they haven't done a single stinking thing about it. And
Right.
so we just had another another hearing where all the senators can't wait to work with Bill Bullard, who testified, and other people who testified on this thing and about antitrust. But we do have a new
Well,
administration, so
we do have a new administration, and there was more positivity in communication. Like, wasn't Josh Hawley in there on that
yeah.
one?
So yeah, he had a viral, like,
I
it's been
mean,
a
I
long
thought
time.
Josh Hawley did a great job there talking about our what we're up against. I mean, he has not done that before. Everybody kills on RCAF for communicating with Booker, but I thought Booker did a decent job.
He
And
always does when they talk about the industry concentration. That's the
I
thing.
just felt like Bill Bullard knocked it out of the park. And I mean, it
Absolutely.
wasn't perfect, but it was pretty damn good.
And that's the other thing. We've talked about this before, how Bill, the difference between him and the other type of lobbyists that go in there and they want to be everybody's friend and they want to make everybody happy. And, it's all kind of a pat on the back fest, but he just wants to get his thing done. You know what I mean? Like he comes in and he wants to see he's there to
He's
accomplish
not.
something.
He's
He's not there to make
definitely.
friends or to
Nope.
lobby or to kiss
Nope.
ass or any of that stuff. He wants what he wants, and his
Correct.
members want to get done, and that's
Correct.
refreshing to see.
Bill Bullard, whether you like him or not, he's not a personable guy. Um, he is no
Well, he's
nonsense
not.
all the way.
I don't know.
Get your job done. We're here to do a job. Let's get it done. And he's super nice, but he's not there to make any friends. He's there to do a job,
Right.
and I appreciate him for that. I've gotten to know Bill Bullard really well over the last 10 years, and I wouldn't call us best friends, but I would call us very good acquaintances, and I trust him. And I had a guy come on my Facebook page the other day, and he's like, "Well, RCAF will never get anywhere until um, they implement a producer for the CEO." And I'm like, RCAF USA probably has what is considered closest to a producer as a CEO than any other trade organization
No
in the
kidding.
United States today.
Yeah, we
So,
need somebody like Colin Woodall who spent his entire life lobbying for corporate ag.
whose closest um, closest relationship to agriculture was that his ancestors worked on the Swinson Ranch?
Yeah.
Whatever.
We're talking about NCBA if you're not familiar. But he worked for Cargill before he became, the biggest corporate ag outfit in the country before he came to NCBA.
Yeah, they all trade help all the
One
time,
thing
no
I
doubt.
thought was interesting in that deal,
Mhm.
real quick, that testimony, I didn't watch all of it. I watched, but I was trying to get to Bill's. There was a guy before called Mark Medor. I can't even remember. I think he was talking about healthcare. So there was a number of industries kind of represented in this antitrust thing, which is all about corporate concentration and
Right.
how to stop the monopolies and oligopolies from taking over these industries. And he talked one thing that people don't think about a lot. I think he brought up, and he talked about how regulations help big corporations, and that's and big corporations will come out and we're against regulations, but a lot of times certain regulations, like a lot of this climate crap is a good example, but they'll come out and the only businesses that are able to deal with regulations are the big ones, that can put a full-time person on,
Yeah.
dealing with this kind of stuff. And his example was the tech industry, as that kind of stuff, it kind of weeds out the smaller guys who can't deal with it, and the bigger guys have no problem that, they can just hire people to deal with it or
Yeah,
whatever.
they have the money, the
They can
sources.
afford they can afford to figure it out, really, is
Yeah.
the main thing. And he talked about the collusion in the healthcare industry, which is I cannot wrap my head around. My wife so she's a school teacher, so we get our insurance through her. It blows my mind that now you have to pick these. I forget what they call them, but your insurance only deals with like one hospital. That's the definition of collusion. An insurance
Yeah.
company Like you sign up here, but you can only get our rates if you go to this one hospital.
Exactly.
Like, what are we doing? Like that, it seems like so anti-American and anti-competition and anti-everything when two massive corporations can just work together and be like, oh, you can't go to that other one.
Yeah, and that is an example, of you talk about collusion in the pharma, big pharma, right? They're in the same boat. But I will tell you this, this week, and I'm going to have to study it more. I just found out about it yesterday. This week, the shrimpers got a big win and got mandatory country of origin labeling onto their
On
shrimp.
shrimp?
Yeah, is a
How do we hire
big.
that lobbyist, huh?
It was a big deal. I've got
Yeah,
to
that's
study it
awesome.
more.
Congratulations to the
Yeah, because
American shrimper.
I was just on the coast about 2 months ago. I had to speak down there to a cattlemen's organization, and I thought I'm going to go get some shrimp. We like shrimp, and so I went in there and I'm like, help me understand all the shrimp. And she's like, well, this is what we caught around here. And I'm like, well, what is this? And she says, this is imported shrimp. And I said, really? And she says, we import a ton of our shrimp. She said, we can't compete with the importers.
Well, that's it.
And
Goes back to the regulations too.
yep,
Like our
yep.
U.S. is probably way more regulated as far as
That's
how to
exactly
fish.
what she said. That's exactly
Yeah,
what she said. And so I was really surprised by that because I thought it was just beef and pork that did not have a country of origin
me
label on
too.
it. But it did, it happened, and I've got to look into it and we'll talk more about it next week. But that was a big win. So good for the shrimpers. Yay.
Yay. Um, what else got? Anything?
Yes, I do have one thing that I think it's important to talk about. We've been talking about land issues, and so we coming off the Maude case, which I will tell you this: that the Maude case is not over. It is. There is some stuff going on that I have not talked to Charles and Heather Maude, but I think the American people need to know that supported them that case is not over, and we need to continue to push Rollins in the right direction on that. They did drop those federal charges, but from what I'm hearing through the grapevine into and this is coming from neighbors and just government employees and stuff, is that there's still some pushing going on from Farm Service Agency and the Forest Service toward the mods, and it sounds like it's getting kind of not fun. I need to call the mods and see what that's all about.
Yeah.
But I do think, we know that they dropped the federal charges, but they have not done anything with the civil charges. And so the American people need to know that that's not over, and that until this case is completely rectified, nobody else who has charges hanging over them in the United States will get attention for the corruption. This case has to be finished all the way through. We have to have action on it. Otherwise, these other cases are not going to see any action either.
Yeah.
So this was the most high profile. We appreciate Rollins and what they did and President Trump and what they did in dropping the federal charges. But it sounds like the Forest Service, maybe the FSA is doubling down in their abuse, or not maybe abuse, but just kind of bullying tactics. And I actually had an FSA employee tell me, "You don't know what you're talking about on that case." And I said, "Well, just sit down and let's talk about it." And I had to correct them on everything. And they were like, oh my gosh. So that's a whole different story. But then, on another land issue, I've been talking about conservation easements. That's the big deal. The American Stewards of Liberty have talked about conservation easements and the danger therein for many years. So have I. So has Kimmy Lewis, Representative Kimmy Lewis out of Colorado, who is gone, not with us anymore. Representative Harriet Hagman has been pushing to put sunset clauses on those conservation easements. Well, here's a story for the ages. So, out of the Colorado Sun, the headline is: a Salida rancher asks if it's time to rethink permanent conservation easements perpetuity is not working. And so what happened is the Hutchison Ranch, which is the oldest family ranch up the Arkansas River around Salida, which is the headwaters of the Arkansas River, many years put some of their land in a perpetual conservation easement to protect it from any kind of, you know, development in the future. They thought it was a great deal. They're very loyal members to the Colorado Cattlemen's Association.
So they got
Fantastic deal.
just to make things clear. Conservation easement, they get a big payment to set
Yeah,
aside part of their land, and it was
correct.
Colorado Cattlemen Land Trust,
The easement holder on this particular piece of land is the Colorado Cattlemen's Association, or it's the Colorado Cattlemen's Land Trust.
which is
And
it's affiliated with the Colorado Cattlemen's.
yeah, it's kind of they're Colorado Cattlemen's Association's what's pushed it, and I think I don't know if it's a subsidiary, but it's dang sure affiliated with it. All the board of directors seems to be mostly made up of Colorado Cattlemen's Association. But anyway, so this family, the Hutchinsons, wanted to have a concert to bring in, things are tough right now. And so I think it's an old easement. But they wanted to have a concert on this land that would bring in like 1,500 people, have, outdoor, it's an outdoor
like a bluegrass
concert, and
deal,
they'd have, tents and stuff like that. And they'd have,
festival type of thing.
it's a festival type of deal, right? Just typical what happens in the mountains. So they go to the community, and the community says, yes, this will be great for the local economy. And so then they had to get permission from the conservation easement owner, which is the Colorado Cattlemen's Land Trust. And the board voted unanimously and said, no, no, you will not have that. It is too dangerous to risk hurting the ecology of your ranch. So Mr. Hutchinson says, I think we need to revisit perpetual land trust easements. Now, remember, the Colorado Cattlemen's Land Trust by itself in 2023 had $56.3 million in revenue, $55.1 million in expenses. They received $129,000 in PPP loans, which has been paid back. They have 16 employees, 28 board members, ex officios, emeritus, and posthumously appointed board members. And they said no to this family that wants to have a little income brought into their operation. I think we would call this probably agritourism, right?
Yeah.
And it would be good for not only themselves, but the community. I think they were going to get like $25 a ticket on 1,500 tickets. Probably a good deal for the family and probably a good deal for the community. But the land trust said, no, thank you. So I think that it was probably the first of its kind in Colorado where they were denied the ability on their own land to act as they wanted to. And I want to say something here. I'm
I bet that
sorry.
was not the first of it. I mean, I'm sure don't you think other things have happened? This is just kind of getting some press.
Well,
You know what I
maybe
mean?
so.
People want
Either
to do
way,
certain things on their land that I mean, they might even not ask because they just know the answer once they sign these. And you keep talking about perpetual or in perpetuity. That means
yeah.
forever, to be clear. People sign over these conservation easements forever, not knowing what the future holds. This guy was a proponent of the
Mhm.
conservation easement. He
That's
was,
right.
he was, saying it was a good deal and kind of promoting it. And now a few years down the road, because nobody knows where things are going to be or what's going to happen, he's kind of like, well, I'd like to do this with my land. And they're like, nope, you can't. Even though you own the land, you have sold it to us.
That's right. Well, they've sold the rights to us.
Right.
That's what you've done is
Sold the
you've sold the
control.
rights to us. They were going to get $25 a ticket. They did sell. I mean, they had
Yeah,
already
they have.
sold 1,500 tickets it's called the Camp Out for the Cause. And, I'm just sitting here going, well, should have thought that one through. I do feel for them and I hope they get that reversed, but not good. That land trust has over 800,000 acres in Colorado tied up in perpetuity. And here we are 20, 25 years down the road. Well, 30, this would be 30. That easement itself was put on that ranch in 1995. And so gosh, it's hard to believe a kid born in 95 is 30 years old, but he is. And, um, and so I feel bad for him, but there's a consequence for every action. Don't know what's going to happen down the road, but you you sell off your property rights through these easements. So
Yeah.
that's
Yeah,
something
I
to
doubt
really
they were
think
thinking
about.
about having a bluegrass festival in 1995, but you know.
Well, I'm sure in 1995 they probably received, a couple $100 an acre, and it was big money back then. Say, on 1,000 acres, well, a couple $100,000 that probably helped them then, but then down the road didn't help at all,
Yeah.
right? Because now $200,000 is nothing, and they sold their property rights for $200,000. 30 years later, they don't have control of what they're doing on their own property that they pay taxes on. We should have thought this through a little more.
And one of
Anyway,
the most interesting things, like we talked, our last episode was at the RCAP convention. Margaret Byfield talked. I've had her on the podcast before where we talked about different issues, but she's kind of educated both of us on this conservation easement deal. She talked about how when you sign these conservation easements, it reduces your property value for everyone except for the easement holder,
yeah.
because the easement holder, and now we're talking about Nature Conservancy, owns a ton of conservation easements. If they become the landowner, there is no more conservation easement. So the value is worth way more. The property is worth way more to the easement holder than it is to anyone else. So when this land comes up for sale, it's like you sign over the easement, and now that the people that want you to sign that over and talk you into signing that over, that property is worth a lot more to them than anyone else. And so they
Well,
can
and it,
obviously outbid and have, it's just some, and one other thing to think about.
no, that's exactly right. And something that nobody's talking about is, remember a couple of years ago when we were talking about natural asset companies.
Yeah.
So if that were to have gone through, that would allow these easement holders to actually help the federal government put that asset on the federal sheet, right, on the bankroll, and nobody's talking about that. And that's a big deal because the federal government wants all of your assets on their financial statement. That's what the natural asset deal was all about. And it's kind of a scary situation. There's some ranches coming up in my part of the world for sale that have conservation easements on them. I'm anxious to see what's going to happen. I imagine that the Nature Conservancy will end up with them because they're the only ones with any cash. So,
And the property is more valuable to them than
yep.
anyone else because everybody else has to deal with the conservation easement and they don't. Because once you become the owner, if you're the easement, she said you can't own an easement on your own property. So the conservation easement just goes away
Yeah, it goes
if,
away. It's delineated. That's
yeah, if
correct.
you become the owner.
If you become the owner. So the other day, uh, I was talking to my sister who helps manage our ranch in Colorado, and she said she saw a strange pickup drive in one of the pastures on a ranch that we lease next door, which has been pushed into conservation easements years and years ago. And so she went down there to see who the trespasser was. Well, it was the individual representing the easement holder, and I'm not sure. I think I know what easement holder that is, but anyway, she says, "What are you doing?" And he says, "Well, we're coming out here to make sure you're doing what we told you to do." See, that's private property. That's what happens.
Hmm.
And so not good, but interesting place that we're going to on those. Lots of land issues going on. Sean, I got to give a shout out to Sean Pond over in Colorado. Man, he's kicking butt over there. New county commissioner, and I think Montrose County, and he is fighting for our property rights like crazy. I'm proud of that guy. So anyway, that's about all I have, Jim.
All right. So just to let people know where we've been, we tried to record, I think 3 times last week.
Yeah.
Um, we have, it's like I said, it's the dog days of summer. I knew it's going to be hard to keep us going during the summer. I had fire alarms going off during one recording. Another recording, we had calves in the creek on the day I was gonna. I mean, we've had a pink eye
And I was
issue.
traveling.
Yeah, yeah, and then Shad's running across the country, and then it's just been. It was hard. It was impossible, really, to get it done last week. So sorry about that. But 4th of July, what are you doing?
Yeah, 4th of July is coming up. I'm just going to get caught up here. Our little community is having a parade and a fireworks show, and a guy by the name of Aaron Watson is coming up to the country club to sing for our community. That's going to be super, super fun. I'll
Wow.
probably
And
just
Aaron Watson in Olney.
Aaron Watson in Olney, Texas. Yes, sir.
What's that song he sings? The big patriotic song? Doesn't he have one? You got to stand for something or you fall for anything. Something like that. That's
I
back
don't
from when I
know.
was a kid. Aaron
Yeah,
Watson.
I really don't know.
That's the 90s, I believe. I don't know. I'm probably
You're thinking about Aaron Tippin, not Aaron Watson.
who's Aaron Watson?
He's a
He's a new guy now?
he's a red dirt. Yeah, he's a Texas artist.
Oh, okay. So that's probably not, I wouldn't have even known about Aaron Watson in the 90s.
Well,
He's a red
anyway, they're
dirt
going to
guy.
have a big party up at the country club. I'm probably going to build a fire, cook a steak, and go fishing or something like that.
Yeah, that sounds like a plan. I have no plans right now, but we'll do something. Feel
We'll
like
do
big
something.
4th of July vacations are for people in town. Thanks everybody for listening. LonesomeLands.com. Go to the website, click subscribe if you want to keep helping us do what we're doing. Keep us on time. We promise to be better. I'm gonna do more going forward to be
Well,
better. I always
that
promise
was our
that.
first mistake. I mean,
Our first
first
week
time
we
we've
didn't.
ever pushed it off. So
We'll
they're
make
not
it
having
up.
any. Listen, Jim, they're not having any cattle sales this week, the 4th. That just usually doesn't happen. So that was our cattle sale week. All right,
All right. Yeah. And we'll make it up at some point. We'll
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 make it
put
up.
out two in a week or something.
Maybe
Have a
this week.
special episode at some point. Not 4th of July week though. All right, man. Um, thanks everybody. Anything else?
Adios.